Josh and Frankie. What a couple of dumb shits. Hello, Primates! You found Primus Tracks. Congratulations! You can find us at Primus Tracks on Instagram and Threads. Primus Tracks Pod at gmail.com is the email address. And, of course, there's a Facebook page called, you guessed it, Primus Tracks. I am Josh. I am one of the hosts of Primus Tracks. He is one of the other hosts of Primus Tracks, all the way from the 39th floor of Primus Tracks Towers in Mexico City. Frankie Berenstein.
Hey, Josh.
Whew, boy, we are coming to the end of Whales and Woe, Frankie. I'm beside myself. We've had such a good time with this record, and yes, as all good things must do, this too concludes. We're going to talk about Off-White Guilt today. It is an instrumental track that ends this record. But we have some business on the front end,
and once we are done with this record, we can move on to your favorite one.
We're going to move on to my favorite record, which is the Aladdin soundtrack. Possibly my favorite record of all time. We will be moving on, of course, to the next Les Claypool record in the chronology after some inter-album interviews and episodes. So hold on to your hats, folks, and your mushrooms. We have miscellaneous debris. Frankie, take it away.
Little Lord Fentanyl 7-inch vinyl, available on 3 different variants. You need all 3. It's very important.
That's required, right?
It is required.
Okay, good to know.
We have the white variant from Bandcamp, plus an optional tip for the band. You get a burgundy vinyl from Club Bastardo, and you get gray with white skid marks from Brooklyn Vegan and Revolver.
Frankie has already ordered all 3.
All 3. And the B-side is bloody fantastic. It's Duchess live with Hoffman on drums. Superb audio quality, superb performance. What a great time to pick this song for a B-side.
Absolutely. I think thematically it's linked to Little Lord Fentanyl to a degree, and it seems to be the signature Hoffer tune at this point. And yeah, great live recording from the Sesanta tour. Great mixing by Matt Weiniger. The band sounds fantastic on that live cut.
Fortune favors the bold. So that was a great move by Hoffman, picking that song when nobody else did.
Certainly energized lesson lure. Yes, please go order all 3 variants of the Little Lord Fentanyl 7-inch. Play them back to back to back and see which one sounds the best.
And send a large tip. Send a large tip to the band on Bandcamp.
Well, let's talk about Off-White Guilt, the final track, track 12 from Of Whales and Woe, the 2006 Les Claypool Megalomaniac album, as he calls it. It is 2 minutes and 21 seconds. Strangely, Frankie, in the credits, we have Les Claypool bass, vocals, percussion. Those are from the album sleeve credits.
Plus,
Mike Dillon.
Assorted samples.
Yes, but vocals? I didn't hear any. Mike Dillon on percussion and marimba. Skerrick on tenor sax, baritone sax, and horn arrangement. And Gabby Lala on sitar. I suppose this marks a third track in which there's some kind of discrepancy in the credits as to what is actually happening on the track. We'll have to take a look at our re-releases to see if those...
So it was just a copy-paste from the previous credits.
All right, so this one, Frankie, is an instrumental that concludes the record. There are no lyrics to speak of. I'm going to guess it doesn't have too many live performances, but what do you have on it?
There are no lyrics, but it's quite evocative, I would say.
Certainly is, as many of his cuts tend to be. Is there a live history on this one of any sort?
It was never performed live in any capacity or referenced outside of the context of the record.
Okay. No teases, no nothing, not even a 3 second reference to this anywhere in the live OOV.
I don't think the song lends itself to any of that. I mean, it's from an instrumental perspective, yeah, it's quite lush. It's got
Mm-hmm.
some really nice percussion and baritone saxophone, courtesy of Skerrick, but I can't imagine this translating to a live setting.
If you think that you have heard any reference on a live show to Off White Guilt, please hashtag Off White Guilt and at Frankie Berestein post it
Yes.
on Instagram so that he can hear it. We would love to hear any reference to Off White Guilt live.
Just having gone through those all those fancy shows
Mm-hmm.
the previous year, I was listening attentively to them, and I can't recall anything that resembled this song remotely.
Okay. This one certainly, as an end of album instrumental, I link this one. I may have mentioned this before. I link this one to "Caution Should Be Used" from the Sausage record because it is
Good point.
an album closing instrumental that is a bit more free sounding, and also contains samples. There's some ambient audience footage of a sort at the end of this track that I can't place, and who knows where it came from. Have you ever heard any kind of source on that, Frankie?
No, but my theory is that these were probably just taken from a sound library.
Les Claypool loves his free sounds. So, yes, this
Yeah.
probably from the public domain.
When I went back to try to find what I had drawn for this track, I discovered my illustration of a Native American. So that reminded me that since I first heard the record and I heard this song in particular, for some reason it put my mind in the context of a casino. Now, I heard the noises and the people laughing and talking, and my mind just went there. And I think the association that I made is that white guilt is a belief that white people bear a responsibility for the harm which has resulted from historical or current racist treatment of people belonging to other ethnic groups. Such examples are slave trade, European colonialism, and the genocide of indigenous peoples. So the story that I concocted in my mind is that people might shake off white guilt by gambling in casinos because they feel that they are contributing to an indigenous business or a Native American business. So that's where my mind took me when I heard the track, to try to give it some semblance of meaning, because otherwise it's just incredibly abstract. Off white guilt and then a bunch of noises and people laughing. Yeah, it's not something that you can wrap your head around.
That's an interesting idea. I don't think that I even thought of it as casino sounds. Uh, so let's go to the last few seconds of this track and see what we hear. Yeah, I don't know. That just sounds like an ambient recording to me. There's what sounds like a phone ringing, staccato type buzzing sound, as if a door's closing or the red light's on for recording in a studio or something like that, and then this ambient crowd noise. But I'm not sure, Frankie. I'm not entirely certain what we're supposed to take from that, and it may just be some some public domain noises
But
that were just there.
But don't you hear like the Native American call at the beginning?
I do hear that voice, and I'm not entirely sure what it is. And I don't think your inference is wrong. It's just not something that I had put together. So you are making those connections, and they kind of go together logically.
Yeah, I mean it's not the official interpretation, but since it's an instrumental, that's the great thing about it, that everyone can take away something different from it. So
Sure.
I don't know, ever since I heard the record and this song came on, that's the mental picture that it it generated in my mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting picture for sure, and it links to his novel South of the Pump House from this same era, in which, in part of the story, he mentions, in the narration, he mentions the concept of white guilt. And so this phrase must have been turning over in his head while he was composing the novel and must have been in a notebook, that sort of thing. And then he gave it a turn of phrase for track title.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clever, off white guilt, pretty funny. It's one of those titles where you go, "Huh, that's funny," and then and then you can move on. And you make a great point. It's open to interpretation as to what in the world's going on with the sounds at the end. If you want to take it further, one could argue that the sounds that the band is making mimic the sound of things like slot machines, all kinds of casino machinery, because those places are cacophonous, Frankie. Every time I walk into a
Yes.
casino, it's overstimulating. Sometimes it's overwhelming, depending on the establishment I visit, and they're that way purposefully, of course.
Let me give another listen to that part. That's a nice melody right there with the saxophone.
Very percussive in that part too. Skerrick provides a bit of melody. The rest of it, very percussive. The sitar flourishes are particularly satisfying. To extend your metaphor, Frank, I just see a lot of coins tumbling into slots, and
Yes.
at the casino, if we're gonna go in that direction.
And and it's not surprising that the saxophone would take center stage on this track and be kind of the lead instrument, because this was a tour where they were doing things like A Shot in the Dark, One Step Beyond, and they were totally saxophone driven. So I think that's something that is a really cool highlight about this record, that the saxophone got a lot of spotlight throughout the tracks.
Skerrick is indispensable on this record, and without him, it certainly wouldn't have the life that it does. And on those fancy tours, he was front and center, and taking the spotlight quite a bit. And the fan base certainly loved him and showed appreciation for him, and he kept coming back for more on numerous tours in the aughts. So yeah, hats off to Skerrick, for certain, for just
At
bringing the
1 minute
energy.
with 30 seconds, Les starts cueing the band for a build-up.
Wow, that builds. And yeah, you can hear the bass changing register. So as people are laying down their parts, they know what's happening where.
Lots of talking in the background at the end, but of course it's impossible to make out what they are saying.
Yes, unintelligible. So it's hard to tell if this is just a whole bunch of people in a meeting hall or a studio or what have you, just chattering away, ambient noise. What a strange little track to end this record on, Frankie, because the rest of the album is so structured and so put together so thoughtfully. Even the opening track, all the way through, and then off White Guilt, we get that spirit of jamming, and of course that is what defines the live shows and tours in this era, was extending these tunes and finding new places to take them. 17-minute versions of The Phantom Patriot, for example. I hesitate to use the term throwaway track, but it's there to end the record on a different note, but I think it certainly does show the jammy spirit.
Yes, and caution should be used is self-explanatory. I mean, it paints a perfectly clear picture. But this track, I mean, what an oddity, right? Because it could have been titled anything, but Off White Guilt is very specific. So there has got to be a connection between the title and the samples and the overall structure of the song. It's just that it's either open to interpretation or it's really hard to figure out.
Yeah, it's a bit vague. If it was titled I Can't Find My Can Opener, it'd be pretty clear, yeah. Right? But this is much less clear than that. So certainly by taking the title and what that implies with some of the noise that we hear at the end, you could certainly draw your own conclusions, as well as the music, of course.
It wouldn't be the first time, though, that they reference this topic, because we have Wounded Knee on Pork Soda.
Oh, sure. Yes. We've discussed that one, of course.
Yes.
Ding Dang, of course, has some similar thematic elements. So, yeah, this is not something that he's broached for the first time. And certainly you can read all about it in South of the Pump House, Les's novella, that we will be discussing at some point in the near future, I believe.
Now, the title Off with double F. Is it making reference to this is a topic that belongs to the concept of white guilt, or the title is referencing that it's shaking off that feeling?
Oh, I just took it as the color. There's off-white is a pretty common term for a color that's not pure white. I think it's just a play on words.
Yeah.
More than, some kind of commentary of something other than white guilt. That's where I go with it. I think it's pretty lighthearted in that regard.
So it might not be as complex as we are trying to make it seem.
Maybe not.
Maybe it's just a play on words. It's just a pun.
That's what I'm going with. Well, we've talked about this track, Frankie, and I think we've hit a wall. So let's do this. That could only mean one thing. It's time for Primate's Takes. If you too would like your takes on the track up for discussion read right here on the podcast, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Primus Tracks. There are many tiers of support over there. There's a lot of fun stuff going on the daily, on the weekly, on the monthly. But this is one of the universal benefits, which is Primate's Takes. And we have quite a few for Off-White Guilt, Frankie. The people want to close of Whales and Woe with a bang. Travis in Alaska, I won't tell you which one, says, I usually restart this track a few times as the first 12 bars or so are so juicy. I love Les's tone on this one, and I'm a sucker for instrumental tracks anyway. Other than Riddles, Whales is my favorite non-Primus Claypool album. I wouldn't say I've reassessed... Oh, I should also throw in here, Frankie, that I threw in a bonus question, which is, have you reassessed anything about this record after we've revisited it on the pod? Travis says, I wouldn't say I've reassessed anything, but it's always great to hear others geek out about things I've always known. I was motivated to learn a few tracks, though, specifically one better after hearing Luke kill it, also Nothing Ventured, and the title track. For me, this album has many of Les's most interesting bass lines and are hard as hell, a definite evolution in his playing. Thank you, Travis in Alaska. Nick in the Netherlands says, usually a skip for me, but I do love the sound of the rainbow fretless on this song, and it's a nice finish to an amazing album, but I prefer listening to the prior tracks, and that's why I usually skip it. Didn't even think about the fact that he's playing a fretless bass on this one, Frankie.
Didn't really cross my mind.
Yeah, because we were busy trying to decipher the hidden meanings as opposed to listening closely to the instrumentation. Well, let's continue our jaunt around the world by visiting Eric in Australia, who says, a classic Claypoolian oddity, maybe just so he could use the clever title. As I've said, I've always rolled along with the Primus Claypool. I would say Purple Onion and Whale stand out like beacons on San Pablo Bay. Nice, Eric. Ryan Rashan says, could just be Skerrick, but this sounds more like a Tuatara song than a Les song. I dig it despite it feeling like a snippet of a jam that I wish I could hear more of. That's a great point that Ryan makes, because this one you could certainly hear in the minute and 50-odd seconds that we get that there's a lot of potential to flesh that out and do something more. Now, we know that Les always says there are no extras, but maybe, Frankie, just maybe, there's an extended version of Off-White Guilt somewhere.
Yeah, because it ends very abruptly.
Agreed. I think there's maybe a longer version that was just cut off.
Yeah, it sounds like they could have gone on for several minutes.
Hey, what if there's a 13-minute version of this one, just like Los Bastardos?
Just like Los Bastardos, yeah.
There we go.
Some tracks do give you that perception that you're not getting the full thing, but you're just being allowed a peek into the space that the song inhabits, and it was going on before you arrive, and it will keep playing after you leave, and you're just allowed to hear a fragment.
Yeah, I feel that way about any track that fades out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel cheated, or teased at least. Let's close out Primate's takes with this.
Brooks breaks it down.
Brooks breaks it down with the following. A chaotic slab of weirdness. I love it. And that is
Great.
how Brooks took our jobs.
Yeah. He took our jobs.
That's pretty much it for Off-White Guilt, Frankie. And finally at the end, Frankie, of Whales and Woe. I know that this is one of your top Primus Claypool records, and as we've revisited it here for the last 12 episodes, any new takeaways or realizations on your side?
Maybe a new assessment that I made while listening to this record again in the process of recording the episodes is that by the time Les made this album, he had embraced a different scene and a different culture, that of jamming. So that began with Purple Onion, and it's very interesting because when bands embrace that culture, the records become kind of an excuse to tour, and they record album versions knowing full well that they will be expanded and improved in a live setting.
Yeah.
So what is interesting for me about this record is that the songs on the album, with a few exceptions like One Better, which is kind of a mini epic, but most of the tracks on the record are very compact. They do have solos, they do have just a little bit of jamming, but they are to the point. They are compact. They never overstay their welcome. And then, as you mentioned, in a live setting, you could get 15-minute versions of One Better. You could get 10-minute versions of Lost Stings, and so on and so forth. And that is very interesting because it's not a case of for me, with Whales and Woe, it's not a case of the album being an excuse or a rush job and then the tour being incredible. It's a case of the tour being incredible, the live renditions being legendary, but the album itself being also solid and great. And it's been almost 20 years since it was released, and I think it holds really well because of the unique aspects that it has in terms of its sound and its production. I don't think it's an album that it's ever going to sound dated in the
Yeah.
future. I think it's always going to be a timeless piece of art. Um, I will always remember the endless hours of enjoyment I got out of it when I had it on repeat through specific periods of time,
Yeah.
and I could listen to it any time of the week nowadays, and it's still a record that I enjoy from beginning to end. So I'm glad that I got to say that to Les when I met him for the first time. I brought this album along with me to get it signed.
Nice.
And when he got to that one, I said, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I'm really glad that I got to say that to him.
Excellent. For me, it's a rock solid album, and I hold it high in the pantheon of albums. Now, I'm going to ask you something, and I hate to put you on the spot, but if you can only have one forever, Whales and Woe or Purple Onion?
Wow,
Yeah.
very tough question. Um, I mean, both albums are superb, but if I really had to take one to a desert island, yeah, I'm going with Whales and Woe simply because it has one better.
Frankie loves biceps.
Yeah.
Which also begs the question, because we didn't do this, what part of the anatomy is off-white guilt?
That is a great question, and I was pondering that as we were recording. What do you think could be the body part to represent this song?
I honestly have no idea. I think we've taken that idea as far as we can.
Yeah. I think so.
I'm just going to call it the kneecap. And the reason I'm going to call it the kneecap is because it's so percussive. You just tap along when you're listening to it. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. There you go. Well, I guess that does it for us. So I'll say this. Off-White Guilt, you've been tracked. Of Whales and Woe, the record, you have too. That does it for our Of Whales and Woe, but it certainly doesn't do it for Primus Tracks. We'll be back with all kinds of great stuff before tackling the next Claypool record in our chronology. Primates, Primatrons, People of Earth, Whales, Woes, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Later days.
Will Mace.